So, first of all, Dr. Ed West was unable to be here today with us. He normally is the other one who's Robert and Ed giving the talks. He being the other historian for the museum. He apologized for not being able to make it, so you'll have to deal with my meager abilities for the first half of the talk today. What I have here is a map which actually was labeled by Dr. West on the canals in Summerville. Now, many people don't realize that the canals, or branches, as they're called here, because they're all a branch off of the Ashley River, actually have names. I didn't realize it. I'm on board here. So that's what we've been studying on, and he has them labeled in red, and then the actual canal areas and where they are to modern streets and all here. So I'm going to pass this around if I can, so that will kind of make a little bit of sense as we delve into this topic. Yes, I will find a way to make that happen. I don't, if we need color copies, you might need to come back or just swing by the museum next week, and I can have them here for pickup for you. The only copy we have here is black and white, so that's what we've got. So to start off with, the town of Summerville has developed over the last 300 years from a simple collection of random summer residences, as we all know, into the vibrant community that we know today. Many people don't realize that the story of our town is really the story of two towns, Old Summerville and New Summerville. The general story of Old Summerville is relatively well known. People coming to this area and building homes to get away from diseases in the spring and summer that plagued the coastal areas. This sandy bluff, 24 miles from Charleston, had flowing instead of stagnant water and a huge stand of long-leaf pines that made it comfortable in the summer months. When the first frost came later in the year, that was the sign that it was safe to return to Charleston and the coastal areas. The sporadic location of the homes these people built here is evidenced by the twisty roads and the paths that dominate what has become known as the Old Village in Summerville. The town hall is located on West Carolina Avenue, the old town hall, what used to be known as the Great Thoroughfare, a main street for that floodplain village. New Summerville, on the other hand, was developed by the South Carolina Railroad and Canal Company. Land was bought around where the new rail line was going in the 1830s, and a designer was tasked with laying out a gridwork of streets around that new rail line, which is what we have now. Timber would be harvested in this area for the construction of the line, and lots in this new town would be sold to recoup the investment. Advertisements were placed in the Charleston Evening Courier, boasting of affordable lot prices in the new town of Summerville. We do have one of the ads here at the museum, and lot prices you can have for $500 for a lot along Main Street. Shops and a train depot were eventually built, and the town was on its way. Almost. The flowing water I mentioned earlier was actually the issue keeping these two communities apart. Close together, but separated by wetlands that prevented expedient travel, the entire area in what is now Azalea Park and beyond was impassable. So think about getting from, say, West Carolina Avenue or Laurel Street over there to the current downtown area here. You really couldn't do it unless you wanted to wade across, through the marsh that was there. Something had to be done. And so starting in the 1850s, before the Civil War, a series of drainage canals were dug to control the flow of water and drain large sections of land. These canals were improvements on the small creeks that originally existed in this area. A bridge next to Pike Hole was built so that Central Avenue could connect these two distinct communities, and the town of Summerville, as we know it, was finally created. For those who don't know, and we'll see some pictures, Pike Hole, which was a favorite fishing hole, and go guess, you could get pike there, was behind what is now the Presbyterian Church in that area. And so that whole area was just a marsh. The business district in Summerville was located next to the rail line, where businesses thrived, and the older area of town on the other side of Pike Hole stayed mostly homes and churches. With the improvement in the early 1900s of the Sawmill branch by the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as expanded efforts at drainage canal improvements taken on by the local municipal government, land in town was kept dry and homes and businesses continued to be built. The story of water management in Summerville is the story of the growth of our town. In this pictorial presentation, which we're about to show you, we'll look at the several branches that actually make up that management system. All rainwater throughout town eventually flows to the Ashley River through a series of drainage ditches or branches that connect the Sawmill branch. Like Sawmill, these branches throughout town have been given names by the inhabitants over the years, mostly in the 1830s and the 1840s. Most of these names are based on people, long gone, who lived nearby. The topography of the town is fascinating, and when you start looking at, for where some of these lesser known branches are, it's hard not to be impressed at how well stormwater is controlled in this area. So we're going to start with a map. The original map of Summerville, the actual, well, a very old map of Summerville, but of old Summerville specifically, okay? It shows the Great Thoroughfare, which is actually listed there, which is now West Carolina Avenue. It shows the original Railroad Street, which of course is now Sumter Avenue. Center Street, Center Street, which would be Linwood Avenue in that area. The Anglican church is here. So it shows what basically was the original portion of the town. Along with that, it does show things like Rashers, and it shows things like the church branch of the canal here as well. Church branches to the right of St. Paul's, right there, and it still is today. And Mrs. Purcell's branch is next to where St. John's Church is located today. And that would be this little spit of water that comes right up over here. So all these areas, as you're driving around, it's something that nobody, well, I can't say nobody, it's something that people generally don't think about. These little canals or these little gullies, but they all interconnect in this town. It's like a spider web of water. Now this actually shows Sawmill Swamp, held back by the old dam, which was the Axtell Dam. And I think Robert's going to speak about that in more detail. Located roughly at 6th Street South and Gahagan Road. This map also shows the Laurel Street branch in the middle of the picture. This is the branch that goes up to Laurel Street. And so you have the Sawmill, what we know as the Sawmill branch today, that would flow out. And then this area right here is basically where Azalea Park is today.
Can I just interject?
Yes,
that
ma'am.
I lived at 5 Points, and the Sawmill branch actually came underneath my house
Okay.
to the point where then it started to have problems, and the city eventually had to come in and
Take
redo
care of it.
that.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
it's all over. It's amazing.
It is amazing. It really is. I'm glad the city took care of that
Yes.
for you. That's very good. Very good. There we go. This map shows Laurel Street Canal between Pine Street and Laurel Street. Wait, let me make sure I'm on the right thing here, and I may not be. Oh, I'm not. Of course I'm not. Why would I be? There we go. I was right. Shows Laurel Street Canal between Pine Street and Laurel Street. Central Avenue is marked by a path on the map. It's hard to see from a distance, but this little pathway that's marked here is Central Avenue, which comes down. If you take a look, it makes a little more sense. The railroad track, of course, is here, and so Town Square would be this area right here. And so it shows the canal, the Laurel Street Canal, actually on this map as well, going out to the Sawmill branch. This map is, I don't know the date on this, but it would have been right around the 1840s, 1850s.
Would the pink be swamp?
We're not positive. We think that it is, to be honest with you, but we're not 100% positive. The legend for this is non-existent, unfortunately. Now, this 1934 map of Summerville shows a location of the Pine Forest Inn, which by then had been closed down, unfortunately, at present-day President Circle, as well as the Carolina Inn on Sumter Avenue, right here. Sumter being right here, just to give you a bearings for this. Hickory Hill Canal is marked as drainage canal on the map, and the church branch is also marked just as drainage canal. And so that's what these canals are here and here. And again, I can, if after the talk, if you'd like to see this a little closer up, that would be fine. Now this is a modern, albeit very cold, view of the mill pond and Axtell Dam. not far from Gahagan Road Bridge over the Sawmill Branch. For those who don't know, in 1700, when the Axtell Dam was built, part of the Axtell Dam is still in existence. There's actually a historical marker on the Sawmill Branch Trail that points out to where this is. It's in the woods a bit, you have to look for it, but this is all originally, what, 17, 18, 19, you're talking over 300-year-old clay mound that was part of, extended part of, the original dam. Danny took that picture, great picture. This is from this year when it snowed so bad. Now this is an old hand-colored postcard of the Central Avenue Bridge at the same location that it is today, draining the Laurel Branch under Central Avenue and into Pike Hole. Beautiful. And that's basically the same thing today. I think that looks better personally. A modern view of the Central Avenue Bridge taken from the same view as the previous picture, but doing the same thing, and the creek is in the same location. This is a great picture. It took me a while to figure out where this was. So this is the Central Avenue Bridge, right here that you see, the ladies right here on front, taken from the back corner of the current Presbyterian Church, looking east towards the modern location of the Timrod Library, right over in this area here. The picture was taken around 1900. Timrod wouldn't be built for 15 more years, 1915. Modern view from the same location today, just to kind of give you, obviously everybody knows, Timrod's there, Church of the Epiphany is back over that way, and there's the corner of one of the church buildings. So that's a 125-year difference between these two things. Now this is just a beautiful picture of the Presbyterian Church. I'm not even Presbyterian, and I'll just tell you, this is gorgeous. Beautiful picture of Presbyterian Church taken from the corner of Central Avenue and Laurel Street. The bridge would be to the left of this picture, and behind the church was still, and still is now, Pike Hole. So one of the larger areas of water in Summerville. Until the drainage of the area starting in the 1850s, this would have been partially underwater. So a lot of the land that we know of today, not just in Azalea Park, but even in downtown here, until they started draining this area out via some of the canals that were built, it was water. Turns out where my house now, it was a pond. So, and that's a modern view taken from the same location as the previous picture. Central Avenue Bridge is on the left, and beyond is the Timrod Library to the right of the road. The Church of the Epiphany would be farther out on the left.
Is there a path behind the church to get down to the drainage area?
There is over by Bethany Church. Now there's a walking path, bicycle path, which we're going to show some pictures of that we found too. But that's the only path I'm aware of, honestly.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah. So this is a picture of the Banks School. Now this area would have been underwater as well. This was funded by Kitty Springs, and if we all know who Kitty Springs is, if we don't, we have some information upstairs for you, which later became the George Washington Carver Library over on Pine Street. This area was originally all wetlands, which were drained in the 1880s and 90s, and construction of the building was in 1900. So this building was basically built on newly reclaimed dry land, basically. Now this is a picture of the residence of Mr. Saul Alexander. Again, we all know who he was. The home, which he built, was known as Rosecroft, and it was built sometime just after 1900. Central Avenue, which at the time was just a sandy road, is seen in the foreground, right here. So you pass the house even today. The gazebo building, you can faintly see in the background behind the trees. It was a little gazebo enclosed. You play cards there. It's standing behind me here next to the museum. So if anybody would like to take tours of that, we do offer tours of that. It was donated by the Rose family, and we've got it. So it was saved from demolition. All right, and that's a local band. You see the jug and tambourine. They're ready to party. But this is a log crossing from Central Avenue to Red Hill area near Pike Hole, approximately where the path next to Bethany is today. So a little later on after this picture, you would have seen that. And so that would be at Bethany Church, looking out and over towards, say, Sumter Avenue, that direction. Same view today, 125 years later or so. And that's the path that I mentioned earlier. It's a beautiful walk. A view from South Main Street, looking towards Azalea Park. New Summerville, which is of course the downtown area where we are, would be in the background. We're looking down, Azalea Park would be down in this area here. You know how the road dips down even currently, same thing. Originally it was all full of water. Once drainage was built and put in place, now they could go ahead and build houses and such around, which they did. And again, just like I said, this depression that you see in the distance is basically where Azalea Park is today. So Town Hall would be up in this area, right over, well, actually a little farther back, right up here. Footbridge. I love this picture because marketing is marketing no matter what date. Long life shoes. So you have a little marketing thing right there. So this picture has us looking west from Main Street in Azalea Park towards the footbridge over the Mayor Richardson branch, which would eventually go on all the way out to the Sawmill branch. And then that same location today, just to give a juxtaposition. Now, we all know Dr. West, and he is one heck of an artist, as is evidenced by pictures here and throughout the museum. But this particular painting by Dr. West shows the Axtell Dam in 1700 looking west. The modern Azalea Park area would be to the right in this picture in the background. The Axtell Dam was built of clay, part of it still stands as I pointed out. The men standing in this painting would be located roughly where the white gazebo is in the parking lot next to 6th Street. So you know that large parking lot area that I think is actually for sale right now? It's right at the intersection of 6th Street South and the Berlin-Myers Expressway. There's a white gazebo there, just to give you a location of where this picture was made, or what it depicts. This is a piece of history a lot of people don't know. Many here probably do. So Marion Street, we all know Marion Street off of West Carolina Avenue, is named after Camp Marion. Camp Marion was an army fort for volunteers during the Spanish-American War. So the picture was taken in either 1898 or 1899. The camp only existed for 5 or 6 months. The tree line in the background would be where Gulf Road is today. Parkwood Street would be on the right. The topographical depression that you see all along this picture in the center flows to Rasher's Branch, which is to the right of this picture, which has to be at least going towards where you were before. The Rasher's area is just a huge, deep gully that's very much still there. This vintage picture shows a bridge in the area that is now Azalea Park. Its exact location is uncertain. This was taken from Dorchester Avenue looking towards North Hickory Hill and Colonel Perry's branch. The branch shown here at the bridge has no known name. Obviously bricked up now. This was taken at what will become Colonel Perry's branch at Dorchester Avenue and West Carolina Avenue. This is the Laurel Street branch, one of the larger branches that are in Summerville. View of the train trestle bridge was taken at the corner of Laurel and West Doty. We all know where that is. Laurel Street looking towards Central Avenue. Central Avenue with the light going across. Rosecroft would be here. The Presbyterian Church is right here. And the Catholic Church is directly behind us. The thing with this picture is, the picture was taken solidly level, but notice how the whole ground has a slope to it. That whole slope goes in toward Azalea Park because, of course, this was the lowland originally. And so before you had Mayor Richardson's branch dug out, this would have just been water, because Pike Hole is just behind the Presbyterian Church to the right. This is Main Street. Let me make sure I'm right here. Yeah, this actually would be in your area, I think, roughly. So this is Main Street looking down towards Rasher's Branch. 5 Points is about 1/10 of a mile behind us in this picture, where that sharp curve is on Main. And this is all super low-lying area back in here. And then right here is Rasher's Branch taken from Marion Avenue. Realize that Marion Avenue currently, the current Marion Avenue, as you're driving over it, to the right you'll see a small pond, and to the left there is just a heck of a fall off. Marion Avenue originally was a dam. And what you're doing is you're driving across the top of that dam, even to this day. And that's what we have for pictures for this portion of the presentation. Are there any questions that I can answer? Yes?
Who was responsible for surveying and the land and plotting out?
Depending on who's doing the work, normally that would be the municipal engineer for the town of Summerville at this point. You know, different people have surveyed it over the years. I know out near where Sawmill Branch is today, when the Army Corps was out there, it was a New Deal project in the 1930s, and so they would have had U.S. government surveyors out there for that. But I think most of it's done by the town today.
Okay, so, no, I know in New York City, it was the Dutch who came in. And laid
Initially,
out-
right. They sure did. You're absolutely right. Here, maybe a little more haphazard, you know. There were some attempts at digging out the canals earlier on that were less than successful. They actually would like start in the middle of town and work their way towards the Sawmill Swamp, but Sawmill Branch. And it didn't really work well, and so until, was it Avril we had said, had been put in charge of that, or taken charge of that they started working backwards from the Sawmill Branch in toward the city, and the water flowed much better. And so we were able to control rainwater.
When was that done?
When would that have been, Danny? When Avril was?
Avril?
Yeah.
1880s.
Okay, yeah. I know there was a big push in the 1880s. It started earlier before the war, but it was a big push in the 1880s to get the water under control, because it really was hampering the development of the town. So even after the bridge was put in at Central Avenue, although you could go between, you know, the two towns, so it really became one, there were still drainage problems. And so the municipality took it on to get it right in town, and then the federal government came down and took care of the Sawmill Branch out to the Ashley River.
So was Central Avenue Bridge primarily the way to get between what I see?
Very much.
I see.
Yeah, that was like the lifeline between the two populated areas. And the amazing thing is, and I've spoken to Dr. West about this, and honestly, I have no idea, but you know, old Summerville and then new Summerville, after people started to live here and build here, there really wasn't a lot of, just because that one bridge wasn't there, and there was no expedient way of getting from one area to another, it was like they just didn't deal with the other folks, you know, or it's amazing how that, you know, I mean, there weren't any telephones, you know, there was no real travel unless you could get over the water, and so, yeah.
Could you go by boat?
I don't know that it was deep enough. You could wade across it, I'm sure, but it, you know, it also just depended on, you know, what the rain was at that time of year or whatever. But you know, the town, the old village town had been there already for so long. There were already stores over there and such. And there wasn't a lot of need to come over here, you know, unless you needed to get to the railroad, I suppose. And I guess for the folks that were here, since the railroad was here, well, there wasn't a lot of need to get over there, you know. And so that's why it really was imperative that the water canal system was built and expanded.
How long ago was the railroad laid down?
Well, the railroad opened in 1831. So it was here, you know, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 50 years before they got the canal system really straight in the town of Summerville. So it was around for a good while. It was around for a good while. Thank you all very, very much. Really appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over to Robert, and he's going to continue on. Thank you. Robert, first here.
All right. So another round of applause. We finally got Steve up here to speak,
Oh, jeez.
not just for our president. So thank you, Steve. Very well done.
Thank you.
Now we gotta add you back to the regular list, get you in the rotation.
Yeah, right.
No, that's okay, I'll go back to
Yeah, well,
Dr. West. Well, when I first read his presentation, listened to his presentation, you know, one of those light bulbs went off. So you can always tell it was my turn to speak, my wife left. It's like I hear him all the time, I don't even know that. But what I thought about is, it really makes sense. If you go upstairs and you look at the one room, our paleontology room, I don't know if you've ever been up there before, they got a temporary display on paleontology up there that's on loan to us. And people always come in and say, how could you find all of these water creatures in this area? There's no way all these water creatures would have been in this area. This is all solid. Now you understand it's not all solid. It wasn't always all solid. So can you even fathom Azalea Park being a swamp? You know, being underwater. You really can't fathom that. Can you even fathom Hutchinson Square being flooded out, not having those beautiful trees and nice park that we have now? So that really helps you to understand why you have porpoise bones upstairs and all kind of, you got some saber-tooth tiger stuff up there. I'm like, what was this area? And it was wild, kind of like, you know, Sunday if you're late for the buffet. It's just, it gets real crazy around here all of a sudden. So they were talking about the canals and the waterways that feed into this area that really, I guess a proper way to say it is to feed out of this area, right? Get the water out of this area. But other things were done with that. Other connections was made. And that's where we come in talking about the old sawmill that was here, right? Making that solid connection. So to make sure I had some idea of really what I was talking about, I decided, well, let me get up first thing in the morning and let me go walk the Sawmill branch trail. Let me go walk that. Have you ever accidentally walked 7.5 miles?
That's right.
Right? Can you accidentally, at 60 years old, are you out there accidentally walking 7.5 miles?
Who picked
Whatever.
you on?
Huh?
Who picked out?
No, I didn't get picked up. She was out partying in Myrtle Beach. She just got back into town. Time for the lecture, so I was just walking. The plan was I was going to walk 3 miles, get to the Newington Plantation Trail, because that's part of this lecture, and then turn around there. Well, I got all cute with it, right? So I walked down this side of the trail in the beginning. It was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then I saw some signage over the other side. They got bridges all the way through, right? So I crossed the bridge and I read that sign. Oh, that's cool. And I kept walking. And then if you go down the right side, you run out of trail. And you see the trail on the other side. It's like, why'd I do that? Well, I have my boots on, right? So like, cool. So I just started walking through the tall grass, right? Just walk. I would have lost my wife at that point, right? I lost her real quick. So I started walking through the tall grass. I'm like, this is cool. And I walked probably about a good 2 miles. You know, I could tell them lawnmowers have been through there, nice trail. I'm like, well, I see the Newington Plantation over there. That's where I want to go. But I'm looking miles ahead of me, and there's no crossover. So I just got to the narrowest point I could, and then got wet. I went down the embankment, went across the Sawmill branch, that waterway down there, climbed up the muddy slopes, and my wife got in the car and all she sees is mud and stuff on my side of the car, and I had to explain it to her what's going on. And got back up and made my way back down. By the time I was done, I was done. Oh, I'm surprised I made it here today. Got home, got in the shower, went and got some lunch, and then, okay, I know you didn't come for all that, but needless to say, that's a nice walking trail. That's a nice biking trail. Anybody here ever done it before? Ever walked out there?
First been on the bike,
On a bike, that's intelligence.
especially an electric bike.
Oh, man. Man, so I have to buy an electric bike now. He said, I have to buy an electric bike. Doesn't matter, they're $2,000. I have to buy an electric bike. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. She's being all sweet right now, yeah, no problem. No problem.
Come by and I'll let you borrow it. Yeah.
There you go, just for a day. All right, so what are we talking about here? A place that no longer exists, but was a lifeblood of employment here for a good little bit, right? Making money off that area. So we're going to focus on the sawmill itself. Now, anytime you hear me talk, you know we're going to talk about different aspects and different people and different ethnicities and everything that wraps into it. So we're going to talk about not just basic Summerville, but opportunities that Summerville presented, and you know the good, the bad, and the ugly, as I like to call it. Okay? So we're going to start out right here. As they were talking about, as funny, I have a similar picture of the Axtell Dam that was first constructed. When it was first constructed, we gotta go all the way back to colonial South Carolina. We talk about colonial South Carolina, as you know, that was a time when I would say we were British, but I wouldn't include that. Y'all were British. Y'all were British back then, so that's a whole different era, right? So that original mill pond that was built is what ultimately allowed them to have water for that sawmill. So just like the canals in the history, that dam started way back in colonial times. It eventually supported the permanent sawmill, and it was an irrigation system for the rice fields at Newington Plantation. So using that water as wisely as they did to make a lot of money in many different ways, in farming and in eventually the sawmill. So let's go back in time. And it's appropriate that we go back to colonial time right now because, as you know, we're about to celebrate the 250th anniversary of this great nation, right? All kind of plans are being done just for that. So it's great for us right now to go back in time just a little bit.
Can I ask you one question?
Absolutely.
So you're talking about Newington, I'm thinking Newington Plantation,
Yes.
where the houses are
Yep.
off of Bacon's Bridge Road.
Yep.
Well, this is so far away,
Well-
No, that sawmill is, the dam is there.
the dam.
The
right.
dam and the mill pond was on Newington Plantation.
Okay.
All right.
Just an interjection to that, and I had the same question initially. The original Newington Plantation was 1,500 acres. And so it went all the way basically to where Five Points is now. It was huge. It really was. So that's why if you look at the map now and you think of where Newington is, you're like, the Axtell Dam is nowhere near that. Back then, the plantation was big enough that it sure was.
Okay, you keep mentioning platforms, but I don't know where that is. Where is platforms?
If you go straight down East Carolina Avenue, like if you're at, every Sunday we have lunch at Bellachino's. You know where that is? Where the Harris Teeter is, right there, where that new overpass is.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
right.
So if you're coming from here and you go under that new overpass, and you just keep going straight instead of turning right on Bacon's Bridge Road, just keep going straight, you're gonna hit a section where there's 5 intersections.
It's the
That's 5
intersection
points.
of Main Street,
West Carolina.
Carolina Avenue, and, I lived there.
Tupper.
and-
I think it's Tupper.
The T,
Yeah.
Tupper, yes. So the 5 streets cover together.
Yeah, that's what they call 5 points. They're actually very close to it right now. So as we discussed in a recent lecture that we did here, the origins of Summerville really started with people capitalizing on our great pine forest. You had Native Americans, indentured servants, enslaved Africans, you had white and black lumbermen working in that pine forest surrounding what is now what we call Summerville. Back then, the region served as a frontier for capitalizing on that pine forest by both groups that also traded with the American Indian. Whether it was whites, blacks, they all traded with the American Indian. So that area, our area here back then was just a pine forest, and people took advantage of that pine forest. It's no different with that story today. Now we know Summerville became a town December 17th, 1847. And what's interesting about me talking about a sawmill, one of the reasons why Summerville became a town officially, right, is that they wanted to protect the trees. Sawmills are not notorious for protecting trees, are they? So it's kind of ironic that we end up with a big old sawmill in a place that was established to protect the trees. And I have a letter in a 1901 Summerville News by someone whose name you may recognize, John Gadsden. And John Gadsden said, the chief motive leading to the act of incorporation, talking about Summerville, was undoubtedly the wish to save our pines. Very soon, however, the shield of counsel was extended to protect all trees. Are trees ever going to be protected from capitalism? They're not. They're just walking around, just drive around today and see how many getting cut down, how many new apartment complexes are going on. I used to work out across South Carolina. You drive out that way, they're just stripping. They're just stripping that area down. When I first started working there in 2014, it was nothing but forest. now is clear. Most of it is
Yet our
just cleared out.
theme for Summerville still is the pine is sacred.
Yes. Yes, it's still sacred. You know, it gives. You know, Jesus gave a lot. He gave a lot.
Oh, it is.
So have our sacred pines.
Yes.
They've given a lot. He's not the only one that gave his life. For all of us. The pines did it too. Different way of looking at it. But still. All right, so the original mill was connected to the Axtell Dam, built around 1700 by Daniel Axtell. The dam was constructed on a creek known as Bowshoe. That was a name given to it by the Native Americans. They named it Bowshoe. Am I saying that right? Anybody know that creek? Bowshoe? And I'm often wondering about them, especially if it's Native American names. We might call it one thing. It's kind of like, I'm a high school teacher. You ever see some of the names these kids have now?
Oh, yeah.
Woo! Trying to call roll without offending somebody? Oh! Woo! My wife's like, keep going, don't start talking about that. Keep going. All right, nearby Sawmill used the water from that mill pond to power its lumber operation. Axtell Dam also created a mill pond, served as a reservoir for the Newington plantation. As Steve said, was huge. So you can imagine what kind of rice fields it would have and how much water it would take to supply those rice fields. If you know anything about rice fields, water is critical. And what type of water it is. You know, you don't want a lot of brackish water up in there. You want fresh water to keep that rice alive, right? Very important. Today, historic marker notes the location of the old dam. You have a picture of that here. And in just a moment, make sure I can skip like this. Okay. So there's the historic marker that you see out there that really talks about where that dam was. And when I was standing there, as Steve said, behind that marker is the remainings of that dam. Unlike Danny, I wasn't going up in there. Okay? A mistaken 7.5 miles is bad enough. But I looked up there, I'm like, yeah, it's probably real interesting up there. But I ain't going. One thing you know, growing up in Philly, you don't just go in dark places. You expect to come out alive. So, yeah, I'm not doing that. Okay, but thanks for the pictures. Yeah, now I know what it looked like if I would have walked up in there. Okay? Appreciate it. Saved me the work. Okay, so moving on. Nearby Sawmill used that same water. We talked about the historic marker. Now we're still unsure on how or when the Sawmill branch was first revised historically before 1900. Right? We do know that the Army Corps of Engineers really controlled it over the last 50 years or more, as far as construction and work in that area. The link between the Sawmill and the Army Corps of Engineers is really rooted in that local flood projects that Steve mentioned. Right? That's what they were there for. That was the main purpose. So the project involved channel excavation. I had to practice saying that, channel excavation. You know, digging those channels, that there were some natural channels, but some they had to dig. And as I was walking that trail this morning, I was really impressed with the engineering. So I'm walking, I'm seeing this little tube sticking out of the ground, sending water that way, and then there's cement sticking out of the ground, sending water. I'm like, wow, this is innovative. And they made it pretty too. So that didn't hurt. So that's some quality engineering. You keep the water away and you give a place for the public to enjoy. All right, so that was pretty neat. That was pretty neat. I couldn't complain about that at all. Okay, so 20th century. A brick plant later occupied the site for a more modern lumber mill had been built around 1902. So the name Sawmill is also now associated with a new mixed-use development on the former Salisbury brick site, bringing housing, retail, office space, and other things like that. That's that capitalism, right? Gotta love it. So while the colonial sawmill is long gone, modern-day lumber production continued in the area. The facility continued to operate as a lumber mill and was acquired by Interfor in 2021. But we'll talk about some of the other folks as well. So over this time frame, the sawmill changed hands several times. I never knew that. Before 2008, sawmill was owned by Mead Westvaco, MWV, who sold the mill to Capstone Paper and Packaging Corporation in 2008. In 2018, Capstone was acquired by Westrock, who sold the Summerville Sawmill to a Canadian lumber company, Interfor, for $59 million. Yeah, in 2021. Became known as you see on that first slide, the Interfor Summerville Division. That became the name of that facility. It made what's called dimensional lumber, something that Steve is very, very familiar with. Dimensional lumber is wood that was sawed and planed to specific standardized dimensions. That's where you get your 2x4s, your 1x6s, all the stuff necessary to make it ready for construction. That's what they were doing. That wasn't a paper mill, it was dimensional lumber mill. They did sell some to paper folks, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Interfor is one of the world's largest forest product companies with operations across North America and customers across the globe. Interfor announced a $30 million expansion in 2021 to increase production here in Summerville. Sadly, in August 2024, Interfor announced that it will be shutting down operations in Summerville due to a weak market condition. But let's talk about some of the employment history there. How many people were actually employed at that mill? The best data I could find suggests that at its peak, as of August 2024, Interfor had 80 employees at the sawmill. However, employment numbers may have been a lot higher back when demand was a lot heavier, when there was West Rock, but we don't have those numbers. Before Interfor purchased the mill in 2021, I love really reading online employee reviews. I tell a lot about a company, see what the employees have to say. So online employee reviews mention a heavy workload with frequent overtime, indicating that the mill employed a significant number of people to meet lumber demands. This historical context suggests that while the mill employed 80 people, at the time that it closed, its peak employment numbers were likely a lot higher during high demand times. In one review from 2021, an employee noted that long hours and weekend work were common because, and I quote, everyone was quitting or getting fired because they didn't like working long hours and weekends. So they had to be pretty busy in hiring a lot of folks, especially with a lot of folks saying, I'm out of here.
Well, what about in the 60s, 1960s? Do you have any statistics?
I don't have any employee records for that time, but I would imagine that's when it was at its peak.
Yeah, Cliff
Right.
Jones
Yeah.
was my neighbor on Main Street, owned it, Black Jones, and they owned it for as long as I can remember.
Now, can you, and anybody in here, because I was gonna ask that question in a little bit, but you help me get right to it. Is there anybody in here with knowledge of the mill as far as some estimates on how big it was at one point in time? Anybody? So I know you said that he owned it,
Yeah,
but what's your recollection of how many people really worked there?
well, my best friend's Jones, and she may know, she's brilliant. I'll have to ask her for future
Sure.
reference.
Please do, because everything I could find, even AI couldn't give me a better number than that. You know that's bad. AI gets everything, right?
Sometimes they're wrong.
Oh yeah, you gotta be careful. You gotta double check
You
AI.
gotta be careful.
You gotta double check, but that's the closest number I can get from the mill itself.
Well, is the mill actually closed down now?
Yes, yes,
Sits there.
gone. Yes, it's gone.
And they'll probably make a fortune selling that corner.
Yeah.
That's a huge
Yeah.
corner.
All right, so as y'all know, it would not be. Oh, this is kind of cool. This image shows how, and this would have been perfect for Dr. West. He loves talking about this kind of stuff. We're talking about lumber as far as dimensional lumber, but over time, a lot of the lumbering, a lot of the work on these pine forests was to get things like turpentine. So this is an example of how you harvest turpentine, right? And I have another picture that's not on here for some reason. I think I'm gonna open a different slideshow. That had the bucket collecting the sap from the trees. So, and this goes back, even back in colonial time. Because one of the main things that the British Navy did, I'm also a U.S. history teacher, so one of the main things that the British Navy did is it ran out of trees in England, basically. So they came to America and really made sure their colonies provided them with the oh, perfect, look at that. Let's break down what you're holding.
Well, basically put, what you see in the picture right here, they cut this so that the sap from the tree would go into a bucket or container that was hung on the tree at that spot. And this is that, or in a real world scenario where it was cut and sap would go in, and it was used for naval stores mostly. But yeah, this is on display here in the museum. It's one of the wooden displays that we have dealing with this topic.
So is that a pine?
Yes, I believe so, yes. Yep.
Interesting
Yeah.
design.
Yep, it looks like it had been burned or something at some point. But yeah, that's why when I saw that, I'm like, yeah, this is it, right here.
So Steve and Mr. Robert, has there been any archaeological investigations in those turpentine areas for, the production of the turpentine?
That's a very good question. I don't have an answer for it.
Dr. West would know.
It probably would, yes.
They would know.
I don't know exactly. I really don't know. And you gotta think too that this went on all over what is now Summerville and around. It really did. So it'd be, right, so it'd be, I'm sure there are some areas that were more than others or was harvested in this way longer than others. And so if we had any records on that, I would be interested to go out there and see.
And it would kill the tree, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it's not great for the tree, but it would produce, that same tree would produce sap for some time. So, yeah, they were able to collect quite a bit.
So if you're anything like me, years ago, when I first heard the term naval stores, I'm like, they got like a store on a ship. You go buy stuff? What? Naval stores is just the thing, the items that the ship needs to survive. Turpentine, rope, tar, all the stuff that they get from the trees and other things to pitch. That's the word I was trying to think about. Is pitch. You don't want the ship to start sinking. You need to be. Now, what's that commercial? He spray paints the screen door on the bottom of his boat.
Flex seal, that's it. There you go.
So pitch is the original Flex Seal, right? You got a leaking boat, your ship's leaking, you fill it in with pitch, and yeah, Flex Seal isn't exactly the original kind of thing. But yeah, it's great to see other ways in which they use the pines. But this also leads me to your typical Rob Scarlett kind of discussion. But here, tar. Doc and I were talking about this. Pine tar kilns. They would have these massive mounds in the ground because when you get this wood, before you can really turn it into dimensional lumber, you got to dry it out. So they would create these ginormous land ovens. And if you know anything about pottery, when you do your pottery, you put it in the kiln. And you fire it to dry up that pottery, get all that moisture out, get that nice glaze on your pottery. Well, it's nice to have a kiln about this size for that nice little planter you just painted. But when you have a 40-foot piece of lumber that you're dealing with, yeah, you're going to have you're going to make the ground into an oven. And it was interesting how they would heat that up and keep that enclosed to dry out that tree or the pine tar that they got, kind of like the pitch that they would get. And this is showing you some of the early operations before we had our fancy bulldozers and our fancy machines. This stuff is outdoors. This operation is, see that big saw blade there? This is a serious operation outdoors. Dangerous job too.
Is that OSHA certified?
It's funny, I was about to talk about that too. What that usually means is when you finagling around with stuff before you leave, I probably saved it to the desktop of my computer and not to the USB drive. Just a different slide, that's all. But it's still talking about the same basic thing. So anytime you hear me talk, I'm always going to find out, okay, what is the African American angle here? What were African Americans doing during this time in Summerville? So this is really where we get into the good, the bad, and the ugly. Whenever we talk about African American history or people of color when it comes to Summerville, it's usually a very positive thing because Summerville was an oddity in South Carolina as far as the positive treatment of its people of color in this particular town. You're gonna have your normal stuff, but something about Summerville, opportunities seem to abound during that time. We talk about Rollins Edwards, we talk about Kitty Springs. It's incredible the opportunities that still existed here, even in earlier times. But of course, you're not always gonna be the good stuff, right? You're gonna have the good, you're gonna have the bad, you're gonna have the other. But we love talking about the opportunities that are presented here. So that's the key word I'm gonna talk about now, is opportunity. In different perspectives. Some good, some bad. So the story of the Sawmill, African Americans have historically been connected to Summerville Sawmill from the very beginning. But both as enslaved labor during the colonial and antebellum periods, segregated workforce during the Jim Crow era, and ultimately a solid equal opportunity with equal pay to equal work, what most of Summerville's history is really known for, it's made of. So you have a little bit of all of that. So historians confirm that enslaved Africans here in Summerville and other local communities provided the labor to construct the original Extell Dam around 1700. They were used to create the mill pond that also benefited the first sawmill that was constructed in this area. Clearly, this is not what we talk about when we celebrate the many opportunities that come about in Summerville for African Americans and people of color. But we don't shy away from the bad side either. We'll give you the good side, but we don't shy away from the bad side here at the museum. It is fair to say that the working conditions for these critical laborers who laid the foundation for that sawmill were, in a word, terrible, plain and simple. Historical accounts describe the forced labor involved in digging the dam and the canals, and I quote, terrible, terrible work and a real hardship. As you can imagine, this black labor force did not operate under OSHA conditions, as Steve was talking about, right? It wasn't a safe thing, that they didn't have scheduled smoke breaks, right, or lunch breaks. I'm sure the animals that were used to dig out this canal were treated better than that labor force in the beginning. But after emancipation, it got only slightly better, because that's when we start talking about taking advantage of people, exploiting people, and what became known as the convict leasing system, okay? South Carolina, although it was late to joining in on the convict leasing system, it did join in. So what is this? Private businesses, South Carolina would lease prisoners to private businesses and individuals. Private business was responsible for providing necessities like food and clothing, because they may have them for months or years. The housing, and what were they used for? They were used for logging operations, plantations, and public works. To be clear, the convict leasing system affected people of all ethnicities, but nobody was exploited as much as African Americans when it came to that. To the point where many African Americans were arrested for petty crimes and given extremely long sentences to keep the stock of workers up at the prison to rent them out to local businesses. Can you imagine that even today? Renting people out to local businesses. Obviously, those workers were not paid for anything. They didn't get any money. So there's nothing you can call that other than a new form of slavery, right? But this is what's interesting. This was legal. Let me say that again, this was legal. And let me say this again in such a way that would really irritate you. This would be legal today. Anybody know why this would be legal today? Why this is legal today? Why you see prisoners in orange suits on the side of the road picking up trash in some places? It is legal because the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution that ended slavery did not end slavery. It ended slavery, yes. So what are you trying to say, Brother Scarlett? What I'm trying to say is the amendment itself says slavery and involuntary servitude is no longer allowed except as punishment for a crime. That's what the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says.
Don't we do it to whites too?
That's what I said, it's both groups. You missed that part?
I missed that part. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say that again. To be clear, the convict leasing system affected people of all ethnicities, but disproportionately affected African Americans. But back then, it was mainly African Americans. But yes, That is legal. If they do it as punishment for a crime, slavery is legal as punishment for a crime, even today. So there's a little loophole that was taken advantage of. Why? Primary goal, just like during slavery time, cheap labor. Right? Cheap labor for industries, logging, plantations, etc. Convict leasing system in South Carolina was unstable and short-lived. It ended around the 1920s. South Carolina stopped using the convict leasing system.
What year?
1920.
So it was a law passed by the legislature?
They just stopped taking part in it. You
Okay.
gotta take, I don't know if there's a specific law passed. That'd be interesting. Now you're gonna make me go and research that, because I'm curious now. But I know they stopped using the convict leasing system in
I
the
remember
1920s.
the chain gangs.
Yeah.
They operated, I think, by the county.
Usually by the county. They had some state, Georgia was big. Georgia was big all the way into the 1980s and 90s. You got chain gangs. They were famous for it in the 1990s. And they did stupid stuff to people. They would have them, all the men would have to wear pink. You know, just degrading stuff like that to make the task even worse, to make their,
Black and white striped uniform.
yeah, all that kind of stuff. And once again, yes, black and white inmates in Georgia were subjected to that type of treatment. So the work opportunity does come into play, albeit still a little less fair and equal during the Jim Crow era here in South Carolina. I'm sure you can imagine what was truly available. It was those low-paying, dirty, hard jobs for certain groups throughout the Jim Crow era. Many sawmills, lumber camps, and forest industries throughout the South, including in Summerville, they were segregated. Who got to do what type of job? Black men were often confined to the most arduous and dangerous jobs, such as felling trees, hauling logs, and operating machinery. In a broader context, for centuries, the forest industry has relied on African American labor to do those essential jobs of clearing forests, producing lumber, and so forth. It was easy to do that during slavery time. You just go do it, right? So they had to come up with a little more inventive ways after emancipation. All right, let's get back to the sawmill itself. August 2024, the Interfor company announced it would permanently close the sawmill. The mill actually closed in late September of 2024, that's when it shut down, due to weak lumber market conditions. According to a story I read from a News 2 report, the company that ran the Summerville lumber mill announced it was shutting down the branch after reporting a net loss of nearly $76 million company-wide in its second quarter. So, what remains of this important landmark, though, and what does the future hold? The area around the historic Bowshoe Creek and the modern sawmill is now part of Summerville's growth and development. Currently, the historic creek area is known as the Sawmill Branch Trail, where you can accidentally walk 7.5 miles. This is a paved, multi-use trail that runs along the canal, providing a popular route for walking, running, smart people biking, dumb people getting lost. The trail was just under 7 miles long, 6.7 miles long. And it's not a loop, so don't think you're gonna walk it in. It's not a loop. Basically started right here on Richardson Avenue. That's the starting point. That's where I parked my car. Here, Richardson Avenue, and it basically go all the way around to the YMCA.
On Trolley Road.
Yeah, off Trolley Road is the last stop. And along the way, you have all these different named trails. You can go into Newington Plantation Trail, you can go into the Acorn, I think it's called Acorn Trail, and it's like 8 or 9 different trails you can veer off into, right? But all of them were,
They did in.
dirt and forest and stuff where Danny goes and I don't. So I stayed on the path. My wife's shocked by that, but this time I stayed on the path, didn't go off into the woods in this particular case. But you can adventure out there. First thing I thought about when I was out there is I used to coach varsity cross country. That'd been a great training ground for my kids. So I gotta go back to Fort where I work, talk to the cross country coach, like, yo, what about using that place? 6.7 miles. You can have them run, because the cross country meet is only 3.2 miles. So that'd be a great place to train. It would be. I'm not coaching anymore though. done with that. I'm done with coaching. Okay, according to the website, this trail will be part of a larger planned system called the I'm not saying this right, Loblolly? Loblolly. Ooh, that rolls on. Loblolly.
Pine tree.
Yeah, oh,
Loblolly.
okay, and it says it right there on the sign when you first start, Loblolly, whatever it says, on the bottom of that sign when you first enter that, yeah, Loblolly Greenway. Runs along the Sawmill Branch Creek. Trail has 4 fitness stations. I stopped at the first one, didn't touch the rest of them. And I didn't do much at the first one. All right, what these, yeah, okay, that's enough. It's hot out here. But you can, they got, and it's pretty well preserved equipment out there too. I was surprised. Little exercise stuff. Most folks whizzing by on their bicycles, right, which is pretty cool. And a few joggers, I was just walking. In addition, we have the Sawmill Development. Sawmill Development project will include medical facilities, residential apartments, retail shops, providing a new purpose for the land as our town continues to grow. You know, Helene, that's my wife, but I was walking past this today on the trail, and I looked over, and I never noticed, Sawmill Village, I never noticed, that's Belichick's. Yeah, that's the sign. We can go to Belichick's every Sunday for lunch. And I was like, I didn't never noticed that. Sawmill Village. You don't look at the sign of the place, just go to the restaurant you want to go to. And now I got historical connections. So we eat lunch at this historical place.
So the path really goes right along there.
Yeah, the path goes, its path is over here. The path, most of it follows that new of the Berlin G. Myers Parkway.
Right.
Most of it is going right alongside, the vast majority of it's going right alongside Berlin G. Myers Parkway. You see the new construction built over there.
Wow.
So
That's so wonderful.
a lot noisier than it probably used to be walking along there.
Yeah.
But it is, it's kind of can't get lost. If you're still along the canal, you're good. Walk back along the canal, you're all good. Okay, local experts, what did I miss?